Jim, obviously, we talked about this with background checks, and same thing here, drug testing policy. The organization should absolutely set up a policy and make sure that it is compliant with all of the regulations. We talked earlier about some states have a number of regulations related to the use of cannabis or medical marijuana. And so it's important that you understand the regulations of the states that you're operating in related to a drug test policy. But can you take us through maybe some other important components of a drug test policy?
Company will say, yeah, we have a policy and it was reviewed 10 years ago. So it's most important to have this policy reviewed. And as you always say earlier, reviewed by competent legal counsel, preferably an employment and labor lawyer who will review it and make sure it's accurate and up to date. So, yeah, in terms of drug test policy, you want to state who will be drug tested. You can state the types of specimens that will be used. Could be hair, typically, urine or oral fluid. And oral fluid is becoming increasingly popular with employers because of its ease. What happens if you test positive? And that's most important. A lot of states have requirements that you give the applicant the policy and let them know. And if there is a positive, some states have in place rules that need to be complied with if a positive drug test is found. Consequences for violating the policy. A lot of the policies don't consider a refusal to test. So if someone refuses to be tested, I'm not a lawyer, but an employer is quite capable of saying and having in their policy that a refusal to test is in fact a positive. So also the timing of the test. We always, if you have employees who are driving vehicles, not necessarily DOT covered vehicles, but I mean, if you have a group of employees on the road, they should be randomly drug tested. A random drug test policy sends a very powerful message to the workforce that an employer is not going to tolerate drugs being illegally used.
I think when you talk about components of a drug test policy, first you need to determine what are the situations that you're going to drug test for. And you can decide as an organization what that's going to be. Are you going to do pre-employment, post-accident, reasonable suspicion? Maybe the law requires that there be random drug testing based on the type of job the person has. So I'm thinking truck drivers, airline pilots, and a number of other professions that require random drug testing.
I think just making sure that you're looking at, you talked about insurance carriers earlier, fleet safety, to Jim's point, is something that often gets overlooked, especially if it's not a large fleet. But understanding if you're leasing that fleet, if you own the fleet, and what those insurance implications are so that you're making good decisions, because that can impact a financial piece that you may miss when you're looking to either cut a budget or become more compliant with specific state laws. Understanding what the employee role is, I think, is key.
And we talked earlier about establishing a link for background investigations, and similarly, when it comes to drug testing, the job description for a job should contain a clear link that is communicated to the applicant that we don't want you using marijuana, and if you're found guilty but positive for any of these drugs, and list the drugs that you're going to be testing for, reason for taking adverse action.